Other Founder Wisdom podcast with David Walters. He is CRO. He is founder and principal consultant at Steam Powered Consulting. This podcast has been brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, or get invited to podcasts for guests, subscribers, leads, and even clients, you can hit me up. I'm Charles Cormier on LinkedIn, CEO at podfire.com. Dave, I'm glad to have you on. Can you tell us a bit more about your background and a bit more about your company?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for the invitation, Charles. It's a pleasure to be with you. So where we are today is we run a consultancy specifically helping engineering and tech businesses sort out the revenue generation, the business operations side of the business. We're based in Texas, so our focus is the Texas market, but obviously we're global now through the internet and through technology. But what we found is that a lot of engineering companies, a lot of engineering founders have great ideas. They're passionate about the tech, but they don't necessarily have the business skills to get through the launch and get them into maturity. So we focus in helping the typically small to medium engineering and tech companies go through that initial startup stage, get them into maturity, and then give them a roadmap to ideally get a breakout and achieve a high value exit. So that's our real mission at Steam Power.
And you started out in the Army. How did that shape you as a human being?
Well, I was in the Navy. So I was a submariner for 17 years. And that obviously has an effect on how you develop for the rest of your life. So I was in nuclear submarines, I was in diesel submarines, I was in submarine special operations. And that makes you very focused. You know, you get very focused on the mission, you get very focused on your process, on your procedures, and you get very disciplined. So those are the sort of inherent skills that I try and bring to my clients to help them systematize. What we don't want is someone who's a sort of flash in the pan, a one and done type operation. So systematization, process optimization is a very big part of how we try and help our clients set up a revenue generation system that will then propel them through what we call the entrepreneur's life cycle.
And you work with your son. How do you manage the balance there between family time and work time?
Well, we actually got on quite well. My son was trained as a gas turbine technician with one of the multinational companies. And I actually joined the same company as the head of their market support group in North America. So we had some sort of professional interactions early on in our career. Then the company downsized, he got let go. And so at that time, we decided to start up the agency. We actually started as a digital marketing agency. And we worked together on that for several years. And that went pretty well. But then we found that our clients were not being fully served by stopping at the marketing function. So that's when I realized a lot of the clients, although we were marketing, we were creating the leads for them, we were getting people to talk to them, they didn't have the wherewithal to actually make the sale, optimize the client relationship. So that's when we expanded, or we pivoted our service offering from straight marketing into revenue generation. So we focus on the consultancy much more in creating rev ops rather than straight marketing.
Right, and I'm seeing a bunch of cool companies that you started there. Like you were an entrepreneur since quite some time, theoretically 20 years ago. Tell me about Iron Rod Consulting, the only security company authorized for armed protection of nuclear facilities.
Yeah,
I really want to learn about that one.
Well, that was one of those things that sort of started by accident. At that time, I'd left the Canadian Navy and I was in Canada, and I joined a company. I actually got headhunted by a company called SAIC Canada. They were the Canadian division of SAIC, which is I think still the world's largest R&D company. So I was running the office in Toronto, and I've been focused initially on nuclear emergency management because of my submarine background. Then 9/11 happened, and we were invited to do some security work, some security surveys, security audits at the nuclear power plants. They just done a pretty major restructuring in the province of Ontario, and there was a private one of the nuclear facilities had been taken over by a private company, and they wanted to be completely independent for their security. So they asked me if, because I'd already worked with them on their corporate security side, whether I could help them fulfill the new requirements post 9/11. So we started working with them, and then it's one of these things that sort of happened by accident. They couldn't, because of their structure, their union situation, and various other things, they couldn't establish an armed response force directly within their own workforce. So they asked us, so we actually set up another company specifically to provide armed response inside nuclear power plants. And that lasted about 18 months before we were able to get everything in place to hand the team over to the nuclear operator. So I didn't sleep for 18 months. You can imagine trying to get professional liability insurance to have a load of guys with guns running around inside nuclear power plants. So that was an interesting project. But as I say, I didn't sleep for 18 months, and I was quite glad when we were able to finish and hand the job back to the nuclear operator.
Wow. So lots of things can happen, like in that case, first you need to filter the guards. How did you make sure that they were sound and wouldn't make the whole plant blow up themselves?
That's a good question, and actually a very good lesson learned. We were recruiting mostly from Canadian Forces reservists. We had good connections into that community, and we recruited them, and we found that they were more trainable than going for regular police forces, because obviously it's a slightly different mindset. We had to fulfill all the requirements of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and they specified that we had to do psychological profiling and various other things. So, we were given a pretty stringent set of requirements for the people that we could recruit, and how we had to train them and how we had to manage them. But we did actually have a couple of interesting lessons. One of the guys who we thought was going to be a great asset to us, and one of our team leaders, when we did the psychological profiling, the psychologist said, "No, there's some red flags here. You got to be careful about this guy." We said, "No, I mean, we've spoken to his CO in his reserve unit. We've spoken to people. They think he's great." So we overruled the recommendation of the psychologist. And sure enough, 6 months into the project, the guy made some really bizarre decisions, which put us in a somewhat embarrassing situation. So although on the surface level, somebody may seem a perfect fit, the psychologists, I was always skeptical of the psychologists until that experience, and they really gave us insight into the nature of the people we were employing at a much deeper level than we were just communicating and working with them. So a very interesting experience for me, and I put a lot more trust now in psychological testing and psychological profiling when selecting team members.
And how do you manage a crisis if it happens? Because you must have planned that at that level for that company. And then you had this other company, Cope Solutions Canada. You were VP operations there. So you must be pretty familiar with the whole crisis management situation. So what happens in the case of the nuclear plant, and what happens if there's a crisis, let's say at PwC, IBM, Sears, or Sun Life, for example?
Two very different models. So in the nuclear situation, the biggest issue there is protecting the plant and preventing a leak into the community. Very much technological driven. So inside the fence, it's run by the shift superintendent, the guy who is the licensed operator. And they have very, very stringent, very strongly mandated processes and procedures. When you look outside of the fence, so you're getting now into the contiguous zone and the public area surrounding the plant, things get a bit more fluid. You have to respond to the weather, you have to respond to human nature, you have to respond to a variety of different events. So in the nuclear plant, everything is very highly proceduralized. When you get out into the broader community, one of the things we found, and myself and my business partner in Cope Solutions, he was the former head of submarine training in the Canadian Navy. And what we found is a lot of businesses were doing event-based planning. And we realized this was actually letting them down because they got very proceduralized around a specific event type. But when you look at the crisis, nothing ever goes the way you plan it. Things always take a left turn somewhere in the process. So we actually adopted a philosophy called all hazards planning. And I'll give you an example. If you imagine that you've got a business and you've got a data center and you get a threat that said, somebody sends a threat saying, hey, we've planted a bomb in your data center, you activate your crisis management group. And if you've gone for situational based planning, your IT manager will be saying, hey, we want to get people into the data center because we want to protect the data, do what we can. You'll talk to your security guy who will say, we want to form a security cordon because we want to protect the site for investigation down the road. Your emergency management guy will say, we want to get everybody off the site to keep people safe. Your crisis communications guy will say, we need to make a press release and communicate with the society. And your legal team will say, don't tell anybody anything because we don't want to be liable for anything we say. So you have all these people all trying to do the right thing based on their individual perception of what to do, but they're actually working against each other. So what we did is we took the first principles of crisis management, created a program that we called all hazards planning, and came up with an overarching process that could be applied to any single event. And then what we did is we created subsets or user guides for the process, which then allows you to use an overarching management process to respond to the specifics of a security threat, a product recall, a stock market run, whatever is the crisis that affects the business. And so we had to define it at a pretty high level. So we said a crisis is defined as any significant event which diverts the business from its normal daily operations. So with that very broad overarching statement, we were then able to bring the C-level teams together and give them the tools they needed to protect the corporation without having a lot of cumbersome and contradictory sort of set piece definitions that they were not able to use.
Nowadays, these risks in companies, well, I guess in the startups that I work with and the size of company that I work with, the biggest risk that I can identify is a PR backlash with the woke movement and the cancel culture.
Yep.
How does one react to this? Because me, I'm an open book, and I say a lot of stupid things pretty much openly, and this is part of my values because first, I want to be honest, I want to be out there, and I also want people to tell me what they think, somewhat correct course of my philosophies. I know that this can backlash. I know that, like the majority or the herd can group up together and make me look like a bad person. Now, do I care about that? Not really. If it does affect some cash flow in my businesses, maybe I'll care, but my goal is to be like independent from a financial level. So I can give zero fucks if they attack me. But like, what is the right approach in that case? Because we've seen that in Elon Musk. He really says whatever he thinks and doesn't care about the backlash, which is cool. That's where I want to be. But how would you take it? How would you manage this PR crisis?
Okay, so I would argue, I mean, again, as a smaller business, you can create your niche, you can create your community without having to worry about everybody. It's the old sales adage, if you try to market to everybody, you will sell to nobody.
But what if your niche turns against you? For example, I had realtors as clients back in the days, and they forge close-knit communities, and they complain about stuff in these communities. And yeah, at some point they complained about me and my company and the service that I was giving, and they kind of ruined my reputation for a while.
Okay.
So what can I do here? In my case, I just changed niche. I realized that realtors were so under my level that I needed to move on from cash, because it was really profitable. I was running at 30K MRR business at like 20 back in these days. So yeah, what would you recommend that I do there?
So I mean that is certainly one of the options, is to just walk away from that niche if it's become toxic. A precursor to that, before you get into crisis mode, would be to look at your business risks. And so if you have, we recommend, as part of the business strategic planning, never get any more than 40% of your income stream from a single niche or a single market area. And that's sometimes difficult to do. We've all seen it in a small business. You get one whale of a client that keeps you busy, and you get a load of money from that client. And then when that contract finishes, you're into famine because you haven't had enough time and resource to run the marketing to bring on the next client. The other thing, from a marketing perspective, if you've got a group of people who hate you, as long as you've got a group of people who love you, that's actually a very good position, because you get interaction. The worst thing you can have is a community that just doesn't engage, because there's no traction, there's nothing. So to have 50% of your people fighting for you, 50% of your tribe or your community fighting for you, and then a group of people fighting against you, that's actually not a bad thing if you're able to step above the fray and hold on to your integrity, hold on to your guiding light, to your corporate pole star, your mission statement. Say, this is not the niche we want to serve. We don't care about political correctness or wokeness or whatever. We are serving business owners who are here to do good in society and who want to make a profit, and we want to help them be the best they can be as quickly and cost effectively as possible. So, you rise above the fray in that situation. And I think you probably made the right decision. The niche became toxic, walk away from it and open up another niche.
The tricky thing with realtors is that they're pretty much like, I don't know how to describe them, like sharks, like they will have these communities, but it is mostly to just get information and get something out of it, or, just steam the heat off. And when it comes to promoting companies that they don't do that quite a lot, because they compete against one another,
Yeah.
these very tight niches. But yeah, that's good advice to kind of have multiple niches, just in case that shit hits a fan. With your company, Steam Powered Consulting, which seems to be very much in the business of systems, you talk about a bunch of things. You talk about lead gen, you talk about profitability. What's your main added value to what niche exactly, and how much you charge for your services?
What we do, so if you notice, our mantra is revenue, profit, and value. What we find is the real money comes at the business exit. If you've set the thing up, if you've got your processes in place, and you've really thought about how do you internalize value in the business, that's when you get to a high value business exit. What we tend to find is most of our clients haven't thought that far ahead. They're still struggling to systematize their revenue generation. So we tend to focus more on the revenue generation, creating those lead generation systems, creating a buying process to help them seamlessly take a suspect to become a prospect, to become a lead, to become a client. Then we help them, when we're at the profitability stage, we help them maximize the average client value, and then close the loop with advocacy and promotion and referral marketing to give them what we call the revenue generation flywheel, so I can actually spin up the system and create more revenue. Then when that's done and they've systematized their process, then we start talking about value and business exit. But that's realistically, to get a high value exit, that's a 2 to 3 year project from an existingly functioning business, for the business owner to separate themselves from the business, basically fire themselves and then create a business that they can hand over to the, PE group or to a VC or however they choose to exit. And that's the end of the process. But initially, it's mostly helping businesses really focus in what is the value they bring, how do they help people, and who is the ideal niche for them to talk to. And then we set up the systems to do just that. We like to make things easy for our clients, so we work on a sprint to sprint basis. We work in 90-day sprints. And the goal is over 4 sprints, we can design and implement the system, then go through what we call three optimization sprints. And those optimization sprints are designed to give you a 26% improvement in 3 strategic areas. And that strategic growth will actually double your revenue within the first 12 months. Once that's done, you can then repeat that system again. There's always room for optimization. And then when you've got your revenue generation system in place and standardized and stabilized, then we look at profit maximization, and look at then preparing the business owner for the mindset shift to think about a high value exit.
Roger that. How do you think AI can come in that mix and help with automation or even scale and add more value than, let's say, an employee? Or how can it be used in systems to actually help scale a business to its exit?
That's a very good question. We're looking at this all the time. And we believe AI is a force multiplier. But as with any amplification system, if you've got a lot of noise and you've got a lot of inefficiency, AI will amplify the inefficiency. So you've really got to understand your business process. And what we do is, the immediate wins with AI is content creation, creating the stuff to go out on LinkedIn, helping you create, the lead magnets, the valuable content that you can use as part of finding the new connections. But where I'm working with the people, so we have a group called the Texas Engineering and Technology Network, and we are looking at saying, okay, how can we democratize AI so that it's beneficial for small businesses? Because AI is great if you've got a huge data set, if you've got an IT department that's doing the data science and managing a large data set. But most small businesses don't have tens or hundreds of thousands of clients. They may have a few dozen clients that they want to provide great service to. So then the question is, how do you leverage AI on a very small data set? How can you amplify that to benefit small businesses? And that's something I'm challenging the members of TETN every time we have a monthly meeting. Okay, what can we do with the AI tools available to democratize AI and make it available to the small businesses, and try and fight back against the consolidation of technology and power in the hands of the tech oligarchs? And that's a big thing we're struggling with. And how do we use AI to empower small businesses with small data sets to fight back against big tech?
Wow. Lots covered there, but I think it was a great episode. Got various insights listening to you, Dave. Where can people find out more about you?
Probably the best place is to look for me on LinkedIn. You can search my profile. We have a LinkedIn business page, Steam Power Consulting, and also the website steampowerconsulting.com, and you can connect with me through there.
All right, Dave. Thank you so much. That was your host, Charles Cormier, CEO of podbuyer.com. If you want to start, scale, or get invited to podcasts for great guests like David, or leads, or clients, or insights, or build your community with subscribers, CEO at podbuyer.com. My name is Charles Cormier. You can find out a bit more about David on LinkedIn as well, David Walters. And yeah, thanks again, Dave. That was amazing.